Each one. Hello. This is a bit of a different video from the videos that I usually make. If you already saw the title, which I'm pretty sure you already have, it is the complete guide to Rainbow Six Siege settings. It's a bit out of left field. I will be honest here. The reason that I wanted to make this video, first of all, there are other videos that I want to make, but I wanted to get this one out first, mainly because I've been investing a lot of time into this specific game, even more so than Fortnite, as far as I know. I spent nearly 4,000 something hours, I think. Well, not over 4,000, nearly 4,000 hours into this weird game. And much as it hurts to admit, because 4,000 hours is not a small amount of time. Weirdly enough, it's a very interesting game that I'm pretty passionate about for some reason. I've been trying to go professional in that game for about two something years, I think, back in 2021 until 2022 ish, I think it was. Obviously, I didn't make it, but with the amount of time that I've spent in that game and with the amount of, experiments, I guess, experiments that I've done in that game as well, testing out different settings, setups and all that kind of stuff. I figured why not just translate that to a video and maybe it'll be helpful to some players out there. So yeah, this is gonna be a complete settings guide. Um, I am pretty confident in terms of what the settings actually do and mean and all that. If there are some things that I am, wrong about, which I'm pretty sure there are definitely going to be some, please let me know in the comments down below. But other than that, let's jump right in. So firstly, before we get into anything of that, obviously the thing that you should be doing first is obviously keeping your drivers as well as your Windows stuff updated. Basically, whatever drivers you got, just update them to the latest one or the one that has the least amount of bugs. I know Windows is a little bit of a bloatware, I guess. It's filled with a bunch of stuff that you really don't need. There are several tools out there to debloat Windows specifically. If you really know what you're doing, I would recommend swapping to Linux or something. Although I never used it, so I can't really speak on that, but it is an option that exists. There's also stuff like turning on game mode, as well as turning off Xbox Game Bar and all that stuff. Basically, just the basic stuff that you need to do to optimize your OS and your graphics drivers. If you have NVIDIA, get GeForce, the graphics, all that. I currently run a laptop on an AMD hardware, so which is why I have the AMD stuff here, as you can see. I can see all the clocks and all that because I have the game up. But yeah, just keep it up to date. As you can see, it's just as simple as just one click, boom. You can check if the drivers are up to date. It's just a simple click. You can keep it on auto update if you really want to, or you can just check with like 10 seconds. It's that easy. Other than that, I'm going to try and focus on Rainbow Six Siege settings. Also, I realized I have my mouse cam on for some reason because I'm on my game capture, but just try and ignore that. So I'm going to be going over basically the important stuff from all this. I'm going to go from general, from left, all the way to accessibility. We're going to start here from general. If you want to keep this on the background and I guess, listen to this while you follow along, feel free to do so. So here we go. Squad privacy, it's invite only for me. Ping communication wheel, obviously you should have this on. It should be on by default. You shouldn't have this off, otherwise you won't be able to ping. It's kind of important in this game. Ping double tap speed. This is a pretty new setting actually that recently just got added. So basically it's the threshold of your speed of your double click of your ping button basically. Basically it sets how fast you can double click. So there is a normal yellow ping that you can do, and if you hold down your ping button, you'll be able to bring up a little wheel. There are several options that you can obviously select to ping with. It automatically gives you a different ping. I believe it is for enemy spotted, as far as I know. So if you don't want to misclick, I guess, because you're trying to spam, the ping button to try and let your teammates know, you can increase this. You can try this out for yourself in a T-Hunt match or anything. I just like to keep this on, just smack them in the middle. just in case. Display performance metrics, again, this is one that just is up to preference, but this is basically if you turn this on to minimal metrics, you can see the stuff at the bottom here, how much frames you're getting and all that, ping and yes and all that. This is honestly kind of distracting for me, as much as, you know, it's pretty small. You can do this to full like this, so you can, you know, check your frames and all that. Back a couple years back, I believe this actually reduced a tiny bit of frames because it was displaying live data. Whether that's true or not right now, I still keep this off because it's distracting, but it's up to you. Connectivity feedback, I would keep this at default. Icons only is okay too, but I don't really recognize a lot of these icons for connectivity feedback. I do still have an issue where, you know, I get DDoS from games and all that. With latency, packet loss, and jitter, these three up here, as well as hit rejected, which does piss me off quite a bit. I wouldn't really touch this unless you really wanted to just be, you know, minimal. So yeah, stun VFX. This is a pretty interesting one, I would say. We have two options here, white glare and dark glare. So for white glare, I've read about this in an article somewhere, where if your screen, or I guess your eyes, kind of adjust a tiny bit faster when returning from a white kind of glare, as opposed to a dark glare. This could be an advantage when you get, for example, get flashed by a blitz or just a normal flashbang. If you have just enough time to make it feel like a cover, and then once the stun VFX actually starts wearing away, you might be able to see your enemy slightly faster if you have it on white glare. Obviously though, the trade-off is that you will get blind in real life. With the amount of fatigue that the flashbangs give me, I just don't like that, so I just keep it on dark, even though I did test it out and I think there is an ever so slight bit of an advantage for white glare, but I'd rather save my eyes. Tinnitus effects, we have three options here. We have ringing, muted, and wave. There's a lot of people that use wave, a lot of people that use ringing, and also a lot of people that use muted. This is also kind of preference, kind of similar to stun VFX in a way. Basically, again, if you, let's say, get flashed or if something like a loud explosion goes nearby, it tries to simulate like real life like tinnitus effects, really, which is kind of self-explanatory. You would either play a ringing effect in your ears or sort of like a shock wave kind of audio, or you can just keep it completely muted, which is for me again another one of those fatigue, you know, minimizing options. You can't really go wrong with these two, I guess, but I just like muted. It's cleaner. Cycle inside camera groups. This is a very interesting setting as well, and I honestly don't really see a lot of people explain this. So let's say, for instance, you're defending, you have guys like Maestro, Valkyrie, you have a guy that has a bulletproof camera, whatever kind of cams, and you also have your default cams as well. Because of that, if you go to watch your cams, there are just several options on your bottom left that you'll be able to see, and you'll be able to cycle through all of them. The problem is, for me personally at least, you may not be able to reach a certain camera as fast as you want to if you have cycle inside camera groups off, because there are multiple cameras trying basically you have to go through or scroll through really to reach the camera of your desire. And because of that, I actually like to keep the cycle inside camera groups on, because it keeps your regular camera switching keys inside that camera group. For instance, if you're watching your default cams, no matter how much you spam your next camera key, it will stay in that default cam group. Whereas if you keep this off, you'll be scrolling through all the Maestro cams, all the Valkyrie cams, all the bulletproof cams, whatever cams are on there, even Mozzie drones. And while it may not seem like too much of an advantage, just like how important attacker drones are, which we will get into a little bit, this one is just as important in my opinion. With this on, you may find this a little bit uncomfortable at first, but as time passes, and you know, I've used it for a long time, it allows you to cycle through the camera groups instantly with the cycle camera group keybind, which allows for faster switching, which, if you know Rainbow Six Siege, cams are more than half of this game. If you'd like to experiment, I would recommend keeping this on. I wouldn't recommend it off personally, but test it out for yourself. It's honestly pretty damn neat for me. Diffuser pickup. This is, well, I mean, I would say both is the more safer option. There is automatic and manual. There are times where you will need to pick it up by yourself manually. If let's say you're covering behind enemy fire, but the diffuser is out in the open, so you gotta kind of inch your way forward until the range, is enough to pick it up manually. The automatic pickup, basically you need to walk up all the way to it, which is dangerous, really. Having it on both is pretty good, I guess, for both worlds. So I would keep it on both. Visible throw trajectory as well. Keep this on. It's pretty neat. If you hold, let's say, for instance, if you hold a C4 out and don't deploy right immediately, you'll be able to see a trajectory line of how it, travels. It's pretty neat to line up or practice, well, your lineups. Back in the day, this doesn't used to be a setting, but now it is, so I just feel like everybody should take advantage of that. Drone after prep. This has been talked about a lot, and for obvious reasons. This, just like cycle inside camera groups in my opinion, is one of those ones that are very important. This setting will be on default set to automatic. Now what this does here, as you can see on here as well, I'll be showing a video of demonstrating this as well. Basically, if you're starting an attack, you start on drone, and once the prep phase ends, if you stay on your drone, the game will automatically kick out of your drone and you'll be able to start controlling your operator. Now this, in practice, is I guess more easier and more comfortable. But let's say you're holding like an angle with your drone where your teammates are going to try and push into. Let's say small tower in Oregon. So you hold your drone there. If you have your drone after prep on automatic, you'll be kicked out of your drone immediately once the prep phase ends. So you got to manually go back in to your drone. And while you're doing that, a defender may have ran past while you weren't looking. This actually has happened quite a lot in my ranked game as well. So it's, yeah, you learned the hard way. So basically what you want here is you want manual. Semi-automatic can work, but manual is just the way to go. Semi-automatic basically keeps you on your drone if you're on your teammate's drone. If you're on your own drone, it'll still kick you automatically. Manual completely disables all that. You have to click on your drone deployment keybind to exit out of your drone manually. Basically, this allows you to keep on your drone at all times, whether it's for you to use or to use it for your teammates. This is a very crucial setting. Keep this on manual. Learn how to do it. Match replay. Keep this on. It's not like a software OBS recording like how I am right now. It doesn't take up any performance. It's on server side. It's the match replay isn't perfect, but it helps a lot. So yeah, keep this on. And then text channels and crossplay communication. It's preference really. Just keep this on or off. On to HUD. This is also kind of preference, but I'll show you which ones I have on and off. Well, mostly off. As you can see, I have it on custom because I have a couple things, couple specific settings that I have it on. Compass, I have it everything on except for compass appearance. It should be on advanced by default. I didn't really find too much of a use for this. I just like it simplified because it's, again, less distracting. Moving down, we have equipment. I keep loadout inputs off unless you're a newcomer to the game and you don't know your keybinds. I would recommend keeping this on. But if you know your keybinds, which, after 4,000 hours of playing this game, you know what your keybinds are. And it looks a little bit cleaner with it off. Moving on to player status, I have stance indicator off. Once again, just like how loadout inputs are, you know what your stance is if you're crouching or, prone, standing up. It's pretty simple, right? Turn this off. Action reminders. This is basically a reminder for if you're gonna be reminded, I guess, when an action can be performed. Basically, let's say you walk up near like a half wall or something. You'll be able to get a reminder that you can vault over it. There are 4 ways to display this. We have default, by default, which shows the icon action word and input. No text, just, no text, only the icon and the input. Icons only, input only, and then completely off. I wouldn't recommend keeping it completely off. It's all preference, once again. I just like it, I have it on no text. Reticle, I have it on everything on. Equipment, I have ally username off. So let's say you're fighting an enemy, but your teammate like is kind of behind them, but not really. And they much more further place. But you still be able to see his outlines as well as his username from afar. And it may throw you off, or you may even think that the enemy might be your teammate. This also has happened to my ranked games back in the day. So obviously, I learned it the hard way once again. I keep this off. I do have my ally outlines on. I may mistake my allies as enemies, you know, kind of vice versa. So I have this on, I guess, as an insurance, and I have ally username off. Moving on to match information, I have a couple of these off here. First up is round number. It's a little tiny text that you get for what round you're in. You already know what round you're in. You don't really need a tiny reminder for that, so I keep that off. Bans are basically just, you know, who gets banned, which shows up in your kill feed, which honestly kind of throws me off in some situations, especially if someone gets like banned multiple times. So I just keep this off. Moving on to other, apparently just says other. I have gameplay warnings and operator guides off. These are also, you know, just to make everything more cleaner, like reminders. And if you press escape while you're in a game, you'll be able to see like operator guides for beginners, basically. If you want this on, you know, if you don't have a lot of experience in the game, you can turn this on, but really, why would you want tips right there? You just watch another video or something, or just play the game. I keep this off. Moving on to audio, there's a couple settings here that are worth mentioning. First off, subtitles, I just have this off. Dynamic range, this one's talked about a lot, obviously. Now, this used to be a 3-option setting called Hi-Fi, TV, and Night Mode. A lot of pro players used to run Night Mode because it compresses the more louder sounds, and that kind of brings up the lower sounds level, I guess, kind of even to the high sounds. This does give you the illusion of louder footsteps, but for the price of, well, dynamic range. You won't be able to completely like pinpoint exactly where that sound is. You just will be able to hear it. So it is a trade-off, but as the dynamic range option has been changed to low and high, basically it's either hi-fi or night mode. Kind of a reminiscence of the older settings, but not really, because I have been trying low for quite some time. It honestly doesn't really feel like night mode anymore. In fact, the only really difference I noticed is just it's quieter. So obviously a lot of people have different audio gear and all that, so it's gonna be a different experience for everybody. Personally, for me though, I like high. I think the game finally tuned its audio settings to cater towards high dynamic range, I think, as far as from my experience. You can hear footsteps well. The loudness of the gunshots and explosions are obviously still loud, but for some reason, compared to the older dynamic range settings, which is hi-fi, I guess, it just feels a whole lot better for some reason. So I just keep this on high. You can obviously experiment for yourself, but I would recommend starting from high. All the master volumes here is all preference as well. Music, I just keep this off because I know it's kind of distracting once again. Voiceover presets, this is also kind of preference, I guess. You can keep this on gameplay focus, team focus, minimal. Basically, the operator talks whenever they deploy a gadget or their special ability or whatever. I wouldn't recommend maximum because, you know, it's like lore and all that stuff. Because the operators always talk when, you know, anything really happens. So I just keep it on gameplay focused. HQ voiceover. This is the guy that shouts in your ear whenever there's 15 seconds left or 10 seconds left or something like that. Honestly, this is kind of an anxiety inducing setting for me personally. So I just keep this off. You can experiment this, I guess, as well. I just keep it off though. Other than that, the only thing that I really want you all to do is keep the voice chat input volume. I don't know why this is at 100 as well, actually. Keep this somewhere around 50. Please, for the love of God, keep the voice chat input volume as well as the noise threshold somewhere around 50. Just start from 50, and then just lower it or increase it depending on how loud you are in game. Because let me tell you, my eardrums have been absolutely blown away by some of these guys on the mics. Please lower these if you don't know what you're doing and just go from there. Moving on to display. This is where I guess the more meaty settings are. So obviously, this should be your display adapter, your GPU, your monitor. If you use multiple monitors, obviously you should have your default, main monitor. Resolution, keep it as high as you can, obviously, unless you really need frames, I guess. Then you gotta go down or something. Doesn't really matter though. Display mode, I keep this on full screen. There are a couple instances I've seen where players are playing on borderless and they are, well, getting minimum frame drops, and it is easier to alt tab and all that stuff. While it is obviously, I guess, more comfy, I would recommend still running full screen for the best optimization. Refresh rate always should be max. Aspect ratio. Now this is the one that I've probably experimented the most. Basically, I've used every single aspect ratio there is in this game, including the widescreen ones here. Now, if I can remember correctly, hopefully, please editing one brick. There's gonna be some displays on different aspect ratios here and there. So I'm just gonna go through them from left to right. Well, I guess, I'll start from right. I'll start from right to left. Since this is a setting that everybody still, asks, like, what's the best aspect ratio? Which one's better? Which one's worse? I'll try and go through all the advantages, the disadvantages, and all that kind of crap, right? Starting off from 21:9 as well as 19:10. I'm just gonna mix these into one aspect ratio because both of these are for widescreen monitor users only. It basically, if you run a normal 16:9 aspect ratio monitor, which is basically every single monitor these days, other than, I guess, laptop displays, your viewpoint obviously is going to get squished horizontally and not stretched. It is the opposite of stretched res. It is squished res, and basically makes everything around you more skinnier, I guess. The trade-off here obviously is that you do get a lot more field of view, but with how the game looks, as you can see, with 21:9 1910, which will probably be on your screen right now, it's honestly kind of atrocious, and I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're running a widescreen monitor. Moving on to 16:9, it is, for most part, the default aspect ratio for a lot of you people out there. It is honestly an okay aspect ratio, I would say. There are plenty of pro players running this as well. As far as I know, I think Cyber from FaZe Clan, I think, is running this. Correct me if I'm wrong though, but yeah, it is still a viable option. You say, oh, it's not stretch res, you shouldn't use it. No, every aspect ratio has its own advantages. Obviously with this, the game looks normal, because obviously it's how it should look, but player models are still skinny, but I guess if you prefer that, this is the aspect ratio for you. Plus a lot of field of view. Tons of field of view. Moving on to 5:3, it is pretty similar to 16:9, just ever so slightly stretched horizontally. I guess if you like 16:9 but just want a slight bit more stretched, just a slight bit more wider targets, I guess, you can run this one, but it's not too much of a difference from your native resolution. Moving on to 16:10, this is a pretty popular aspect ratio for a lot of pros as well. Most notable pros, I guess, of using this aspect ratio, as far as I know, Goga back in the old G2 days, G2 Penta days. If you know that team, you're a real dog. But he also used it, and I believe NJR from Dark Zero also utilizes this aspect ratio. It is a very balanced aspect ratio. You still get a decent amount of stretch, but it's not too stretched to the point where the game looks a little weird. I've tried this aspect ratio for quite a long time as well. It's pretty good, I'd say, although my preferences are a little bit more towards the stretched one. But it's nothing really wrong or bad. It's actually really good. So moving on to 3x2, kind of similar to how 16:9 and 5x3 is. It is slightly more stretched than 16:10. It's kind of a balance between extremely stretched and not really stretched, if that makes any sense. Basically, if you want more stretched than 16:10, 3x2 is probably your answer. Although from my personal experience, the 3x2 aspect ratio is in my opinion at least, the aspect ratio where the enemies start to move a little faster visually. Personally, the reason why I actually don't use this aspect ratio is because comparatively to how big the player models are, they move a tad bit too fast for me. Whereas 16:10, obviously is a bit less stretched and is in terms of enemy movement speed, visually, it is a bit more predictable. Whereas 3x2, it is a good balance, but it's not really best at both either. But hey, if you want the ultimate balance, I guess this is the way to go. Moving on, this is probably the most used aspect ratio probably for everybody out there, basically, that are playing this game in a more serious manner. 4x3. This is where the extreme stretch starts coming into hand. Player models are chonky. They are extremely wide, with the cost of obviously moving extremely fast across your screen, because your FOV at this point is pretty reduced. So take that as you will, I guess. If you want more field of view, this is not the aspect ratio you want to run. You're much better off using 3x2 or 16:10. But if you want to be, I guess, a bit more confident in gunfights, because for a lot of people, from what I understand, is that wider targets, not necessarily bigger, which I will get into a little bit, but visually wider targets are more desirable to look at and to hit. Then finally, we have 5x4, which is the aspect ratio that I use. After tons of experimenting, I decided that this is the one that I wanted to run. So obviously, being the one at the very left here, other than these two here, 5x4 is the most stretched aspect ratio in the entire game. It is, well, you expect it, very wide and very fast. But honestly, this is kind of, I guess, predictable in a way, because it's so stretched. Everything moves so fast, but everything's so wide. But at that point, you kind of expect it to be. So for me personally, I actually had a much easier time adapting this aspect ratio, because everything was more predictable, because everything's fast and everything's wide. There are some pros that I believe utilizes at some point. I believe Joystick from Empire slash Virtus Pro utilized this aspect ratio for some time, I think. I'm not sure what the settings are right now, but personally, I think 5x4 is what I'm going to try and stick with. It's a pretty decent aspect ratio in my opinion. But really, you can't go really wrong with any of these settings, other than, I guess, the widescreen ones. If you really, really want that maximum field of view, I guess you can try it out. But really, you can divide into, you want more field of view, use 16:9, 5:3, or 16:10. If you want a bit more wider targets by sacrificing your field of view, use either 3:2, 4:3, or 5:4. Experiment it with yourself. I've experimented a bit too much with these. I could probably make a whole ass video with this as well, which I kind of am, but yeah. There's aspect ratios for you. I would recommend starting from 16:10 though, because it is a balanced aspect ratio alongside 3x2. I would recommend starting from 16:10 if you don't really know where to start, and work your way up from there, I guess. If you want more stretched, go to the left side. If you want less stretched, go to the right side. Simple as that. May have spent a bit too much time on aspect ratios, but there you go. VSync, keep this off. It's not worth it. If you're experiencing screen tear, use a third party like official, different kind of software. Don't use an in-game VSync thing. It's just not worth it. Same story for FPS limit. Just keep this off in game. And if you want an FPS limit, use an entirely different software. I believe there's a much more stable and like official FPS limiter slash management software out there. Keep this off. Widescreen litter box. Now, this basically gives you black bars, kind of like a movie, as you can see on the screen right now. Hopefully, I'm showing it to you right now. But honestly, you could try and experiment with this if you're playing competitively. I guess you're removing distractions from your top and your bottom side of the screen. Um, I mean, obviously, if you're playing casually, you don't really want this because it squishes everything from the top at the bottom. I just keep this off because even if it gives a competitive advantage, it just hurts my eyes. Field of view, just like how aspect ratio is. I've been testing a lot of field of view values here and there, from all the way from I don't know 69 to like 70 to like what I am right now 5.4 90 or 384 3284 3283 3290 3287. Yeah, or 16998. I've used tons of different aspect ratios and field of view combos. Basically, what you need to know is that you want to keep this between something like 80 and 90. If you think you're struggling with more long-range gunfights, you may want to turn this down a little bit, maybe something like 84 or 85 or even 87, 86, something like that. Obviously, with vice versa, if you struggle with more close-range gunfights, keep this high, somewhere around 90. Basically, these two complement each other, the aspect ratio and the field of view. Basically, what you want to do is find your aspect ratio first, in my opinion anyways. You want to set how wide your character models want to be. I guess in my case, I want it to be super wide, so I keep this here. As for field of view, because my field of view is pretty chopped, I keep this all at 90, and honestly, it's a pretty good balance for me personally. A lot of players use 4x3, something like 84 FOV, or 85, or 87. Or some players just keep it at 90 at like 3.2 or 1610 for maximum FOV. Again, try this out for yourself. I would recommend starting around 85, and just like how aspect ratio is, if you want more, turn it up by maybe 2 notches, maybe even 1, if you're really trying to experiment. If you want bigger targets, I guess, keep this down a little bit, I guess. Somewhere around, I would recommend around the 83 to 84 range, something like that. But yeah, once again, try this out for yourself. But display area, basically this is, you can see the little photo kind of thing on the screen there. This is where your HUD display area is going to be. You can maximize this out like this or minimize it like this. I like it on the minimal because it's cleaner. Moving on to menu display area, same thing. It's just adjusting your menu area, honestly, and honestly, I kind of like it like that. Also, if you shrink it down, you can see at the top here a little bit. It kind of cuts off the cinematicness, I guess. Huh, yeah, I don't like that. Hang on, let me. There you go. Wait. There you go. Yeah. I'll keep it like that, I guess. As for brightness, I have it on 56. Now, this may be a bit dark to some of you. I would recommend starting from 60 and then working our way either up or a bit down. But personally, I have it on 56. And I also have a specific monitor setting. I utilize a setting called Black Equalizer, which basically boosts up the more darker areas of the map while trying not to, blind you in more brighter areas. It works pretty well, I'd say, and I would recommend turning it on if you have a monitor that kind of supports something like that, something that's called like Black Equalizer or Shadow Booster, Black Booster, something like that. I would recommend trying experimenting with this, but if those monitor settings just completely just washes out the entire monitor, I would recommend turning it off and just utilizing the in-game brightness to do it, because I used to not run Black Equalizer and run something like 68 brightness, and it still worked. So experiment it with yourself. Moving on to graphics. Honestly, there is a lot of stuff here that you can cover, but basically what you want here is keep everything on low. It doesn't really matter. Other than something like, let's say, I don't know, VRAM limit. This basically manages VRAM memory, utilizes VRAM memory usage by dynamically loading and unloading textures. Basically, if you stand away far enough from like a map, object, something like a bench or a box. If it's far enough, it will actually not load, but if you get close enough, it'll pop in. Now for more higher end gear users, you may actually want to turn this up a slight bit, something like normal or above normal. Personally, for my laptop setup though, I keep this all the way down because it eats up your frames at times. It's important to know that if you're either CPU limited or GPU limited, or bottlenecked, I guess is the correct word for this. It depends on which one is bottlenecked, and depending on which one, it'll actually stabilize your frames if you go up a slight notch. But for me, I'm GPU bottlenecked, and yeah, it costs a lot of my frames. So I keep this all on low. Some players may focus on the LOD quality, which adjusts the distance at which lower level detail meshes are used. Now, back in the day, enemy player models used to, if it was too far away, it would render their like heads as like a triangle. That's pretty old news though. Nowadays, it's only for meshes and detail on the actual map itself. So it can save a tiny bit of frames, but it doesn't really affect your gameplay all that much. So I would keep this at low. What you want to keep on though is, other than all this here, is shadows. You probably heard this many times before if you watched a couple other Siege settings videos. You might say, why would you want shadows? It's all dark and gloomy and all that. It actually displays shadows on your enemies as well. Prime example of this obviously is clubhouse rafters. If there's somebody standing outside of the door of a garage, you'll be able to see their shadows, and you'll be able to know if they're gonna peek you or not depending on how that shadow moves. You'll be able to see it pretty clearly. Now the higher you go, the higher shadow quality it becomes. It's kind of self-explanatory. You'll be able to see the exact outlines of your enemy's shadows. I guess it's not really worth it in my opinion to go very high or ultra, even high in my opinion, unless you have a really beefy setup. But by default you want this at medium in my opinion. It's not going to be every single situation where shadows is going to benefit you, but there are going to be some times where it will, and you may thank this setting for it, which I did too. As for everything else, keep everything on low or off. Everything low, off. Now you may have noticed this setting here. I have anti-aliasing on TAA, and my render scaling is all the way down to 25. This is specifically for my use case. If you remember, back in maybe a couple of years back, I can't remember exactly, but Rainbow Six Siege used to run 3 different APIs: DX11, DX12, and Vulkan. For more lower end users like how I am, DX11 and Vulkan used to give me stable frames around 140 plus ish with all these exact settings, but with render scaling at 100 and anti-aliasing off. This is what you should be able to run, or what you should run, because the game looks, well, normal if you do this. But the removal of those two specific APIs and Ubisoft's, I guess, decision to wanting better graphics in a competitive shooter, I still have a pretty big gripe in that decision, because it basically removed like 100-ish frames from my setup. So now if I go to off with render scaling at 100, I get around, I don't know, 100 FPS max and around 30 FPS at the lowest. It's honestly bullshit. The only way to get around this for me is I had to turn anti-aliasing on TAA, which actually does save a little bit of performance even compared to even compared to off for some reason. I keep it on TAA, and then with this I have the option to lower the render scaling, which I did to 25, which is the lowest. If you're really struggling on frames, I would recommend just doing this, I guess, and then just turning up the sharpness of your monitor, or if there's like a sharpening filter in your software, stuff like that, turning it up, I guess, does help, which is what I'm doing. But if you're not too caught up on frames, I would still recommend keeping this on off. If you're really tight on frames though, like how I am, keep this on that, I guess. It's the only way. Stupid Ubisoft, I swear to God. Moving on to controls, here we go. So starting off, we have drone speed boost. This is a pretty new addition to the game. Basically, whichever keybind is your drone speed boost, your drone temporarily gets faster, which is pretty good to escape from like defenders or stuff like that. If you want to drone faster, I guess. There's hold or toggle. It's up to you. I just use hold. Raw input mouse and keyboard. Now, I would recommend keeping this on for most of you, but for some reason, on my setup that is, if you keep this on, I get like a 10 FPS drop in every situation for some reason. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if this is a specific thing from my end, but because of that, I keep this off, and it doesn't really affect too much in terms of like like input latency. I guess you can try this out in game. If this drops your frames, I would just keep this off, which I do. Mouse conversion, I don't know why you want this on. Mouse sensitivity, horizontal and vertical. This one's a pretty interesting setting here as well. So you may think, I have it on 92. Why do you have such a high sensitivity? Well, there's a setting that I changed in game. Well, not in game, I guess, outside of the game. If you go to your file manager, I guess, file explorer, whatever, go to documents, go to my games, go to Rainbow Six. You'll be able to see a couple of these folders here. I do have an alt account, which is why I have two of these. You may only have just one of these laying around. Basically, you want to get into these. We'll click on this one and then double click on the game settings. It'll bring up a little note here. If you scroll down here all the way until you see this right here, mouse sensitivity multiplier unit. Don't get it confused with the ADS gamepad multiplier unit or whatever that's similar to this. It's specifically called mouse sensitivity multiplier unit. Now by default, this will be set to 0.02. Basically, this would make my in-game sensitivity here actually 92. But if you go here and modify it to 0.002, it'll basically make it so that your sensitivity slider is now at a maximum. If you set it to 100, for example, like this, you will be now running a sensitivity of 10 if you are on the default multiplier. Basically, this gives you the option to fine-tune your sensitivity, really. Let's say you are on something like 9 sensitivity, right? You're on 9 sensitivity. It's okay, but it's a tad bit slow. So you go to 10 sensitivity. Now it's a bit too fast. You can't go between them, right? Well, this is where this setting comes in. Because now, if you set it to 90 with this multiplier that I have set up, 90 will now feel like 9. And vice versa, if you keep it at 100, it'll feel like 10. It will be 10. So you can basically go to something like 95, which will feel like 9.5, right in the middle. Oh, maybe it's a bit too fast. You want to something like 9.4 or 9.3. Basically, if you're comfortable with a sense that's lower than 10, which is the maximum that the sensitivity slider can go to, I would absolutely highly recommend using this setting, as you can fine-tune your sensitivity to whatever you want in the range of 1 to 10. If you go beyond that, let's say like 11 or 12, sadly there isn't an option for that. And as you just saw, yeah, I use 9.2. Bit of a weird setting, I'd say, but it's what I'm comfortable with. Mouse ADS sensitivity. This is the ADS sensitivity that I use. No matter which sensitivity you use, basically just try it out for like a couple weeks or something. Don't blame it on yourself. Just keep on using it. Try and feel confident in your gunfights. Try and stick with one and just experiment a lot. Sensitivity takes time. Moving on here to mouse scroll. Basically, this enables you to switch weapons with your mouse scroll wheel. I personally keep this off because you may switch your weapon by accident or something, and I don't really use it anyway, so just keep it off. Gadget deployment, I have this on advanced. So basically on default, which is standard, you would press your gadget button and then hold that button and then wait for the interaction thing to pop up, and then you'll be able to deploy your gadget. Whereas advanced, it changes over so that if you just press your gadget deployment button once, you will keep on holding your gadget out, and you gotta click your primary shooting button, I guess. Now this may be preference, but the one big advantage to this is that while you're deploying your gadget, if for some reason somebody decides to bum rush you or something like that, you can immediately switch off of it and start, and you pull your gun out. You can also just find specific spots where you can line up your gadget. Really, it's not too big of a difference, but I would recommend on advanced. Drone deployment. This is another pretty interesting setting here. So basically, if you throw your drone as an attacker, let's say on the ground or in the air, whatever you want, it'll automatically get into your drone view. Whereas on advanced, you have to click on your drone, camera view button. This is a pretty similar setting to the drone after prep setting back in the general settings. Basically, let's say you are trying to clear out a roamer or something like that. Maybe you're alone. You like hear some shuffling like beyond the wall or like in the next room or something. So you deploy your drone to try and drone him out. The problem is the second you throw your drone, it makes a specific sound which may alert the defender that there's an attacker nearby that just started droning, meaning they don't have their gun up. And what do? You just push them and get a free kill basically. Because of this, what you can do is turn drone deployment to advanced, and by throwing your drone on the ground, you would still be able to keep your gun up. You can wait for the sound cue and see if the defender is going to push you or if he's staying put. Depending on how it goes, you can go behind cover to start droning, or you can fake him out as if you're droning and get a free kill basically. This is a very important settings. I would recommend keeping it in advanced and sticking with it. Then we have all these settings here. We have aim, lean, sprint, crouch, prone, and walk. Basically, these are either hold or toggles. These are completely up to you and preference. I keep aim on hold. You can keep it on toggle. Lean, I have it on toggle. Someone uses it on hold. Pretty famously, Spoit from Shopify Rebellion uses hold lean. I like it on toggle lean though, so I just keep it at that. It's personal preference. Sprint as well, hold or toggle, but I would recommend this on hold because, I mean, how much do you really need to sprint in that game? If anything, you should sprint less. The immortal words of why you sprint.
Bio still has time to win the fight, but why are you sprinting, Bio?
Crouch, obviously, again, hold or toggle, it's up to you. Prone as well, hold or toggle, it's up to you. I do have it on prone for one reason though. It's because of the Hashome peak. If you heard of it, basically it's a peaking method that involves spamming your prone key. Now I'm not too good at this. I'm still trying to practice this, but having it on hold doesn't really hurt too much in my opinion. I mean, you don't really prone all the time in this game, so I really recommend testing this out, I guess. But again, personal preference. Same sort of walk, personal preference. Keybinds as well, this is completely up to you. Some specific keybinds that I do have though, I guess, is that I have my crouch key on space and the navigate, which is basically vaulting over because there's no jumping in this game. I have it on C with how my fingers are positioned on my keyboard. Usually when you're taking a gunfight, you want to try and like change your head level here and there, which involves a lot of crouching and standing up and all that. Keeping crouch at space allows me to keep all my fingers on all my movement binds, whereas if I have it on C, my right side, which is my D key, gets a little bit compromised when I move around. So that's just personal preference, but it's just, yeah, I do have it on that. My secondary gadget on my mouse button 5 here, as you can see, right on this here. Observation tools, deploy drone, I have it on 4 and 5. I don't have a select primary and secondary weapon. I only use weapon swap. So basically it's this button right here. If I press it once, it cycles through my secondary and primary guns, which acts as a one button switch method for both guns, which is pretty nice in my opinion, so I keep using that. Other than that, again, these are all personal preference. Other than that, controller options I'm not going to get into because it's way too much. I've never used a controller in this game, so privacy, there's not a lot to really cover here unless you want to use a nickname here. As you can see, if you're a streamer or a content creator like I am and you want to hide your name, you can use one of these options, I guess. Moving on to accessibility, these are the other options that were previously in either general. You can access them in accessibility. First off, screen shake intensity, keep this off. They are medium and default stuff. It should be on default by default. Basically, it shakes your entire screen when there's like an explosion near you or something. It makes it immersive, but obviously, again, it's a competitive shooter. You want all the advantages you can get, and yeah, keep this off. Motion blur as well, keep this off. You already know why. And these are the settings I covered before: dark glare, muted, dynamic range, and all that. Moving on to HUD colors. Again, this is all entirely personal preference here. Team color, enemy team color, positive feedback, negative feedback, marker ping colors, location pings. Then you have your optic color here as well. This is also personal preference. You can't go wrong with any of these here, as you can see. Like literally none of them. Maybe black, I guess, which may blend in with basically anything. But yeah, I keep it on neon green. Optic opacity, there are some recommends to keep it somewhere at a max of 90 and never go 100. But personally, I never had a issue with the 100. And personally, I do like my optics standing out pretty well. So yeah. Other than that, these are all also personal preferences for chat and all that. And that's basically it. Yeah, that was a longer video than I expected. Hopefully these settings at least try and give you sort of a benchmark in starting your Rainbow Six Siege journey, or if you were struggling to find your own settings. Trust me, experimenting with all these settings in a game like this is not fun. But hopefully with this video it helped out in some way. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. If you have any more suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, that'll be it. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.